Okay. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well today. And thank you so much for joining this FRAN webinar on threats to democracy and upcoming elections happening in Europe and Latin America. Today, I'm your host, Alexander Reed Ross. I'm on the executive committee of FRAN. And so I'll be doing this trite introduction for everybody, but I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. And again, I know so much is happening in the world today, and we all want to sort of weigh in, but we're very blessed to have such a prestigious panel involving some real life experts who everyone should listen to prior to weighing in on such things. And in this case, we have upcoming elections, which matter very significantly, as we all see with the recent elections in Poland. These things can actually carry a significant amount of weight and gravitas. So I think that this panel, I'm excited to watch this panel. I know y'all are excited to watch this panel to get a sense of what we can maybe expect. What are some of the implications for these elections going forward? And as well, let's hear about some of the parties involved from the far right, because some of them may seem a little bit obscure, but they are quite dangerous. So, without further ado, and I should note, this is the Far Right Analysis Network. We are fairly new, developing out of a previous organization, and we bring together a network. We bring together a network of analysts, researchers, scholars with loads of experience studying and writing and researching about these topics. And if you're interested in the organization, perhaps reach out. You can email me personally at aross@pdx.edu. Love to hear from you. So, without further ado, again, our three panelists that we have today are Jean-Yves Camus, Cat Tebaldi, and Ariel Goldstein. We'll start here with Ariel Goldstein, doctor in social sciences from the Faculty of Social Sciences at UBA, master in political science from the Institute of Higher Social Studies, sociologist from the Faculty of Social Sciences at UBA, and adjunct researcher of CONICET at the Institute of Latin American and Caribbean Studies. He's also on the Faculty of Social Sciences, and let's see, his latest books are Bolsonaro, Brazil's Democracy in Danger. We also have Poder Evangélico, How Religious Groups Are Taking Over Politics in America, and The Authoritarian Reconquest, How the Global Right Threatens Democracy in Latin America. So I'm very excited to hear from Professor Goldstein, and with that, I'll turn it over.
Well, thanks a lot, Alexander, for the invitation and for the Far Right Analysis Network. It's for me a pleasure to be with us and with such prestigious people on the panel, such as Professors Camus and Tebaldi. So I will talk about the situation here in Argentina and how this engages with the far right internationally. On the last years, I consider that appeared an international far right that unifies in different proportions religion, nationalism, and libertarianism. I consider that this kind of radical right leaders represent a conservative religious syncretism, where they unify and combine characteristics of Western religions such as Judaism, evangelism, and Catholicism in defense of what they call the traditional family, and also some religious ideas that they extract from these religions. Some other authors have called this radical right as neo-patriotic, considering that they oppose to what they call globalism, and they promote a vision against global institutions. When I was in Brazil last month, I read a research that said that Bolsonaro, former president of Brazil, still has 40% of supporters there in Brazil, considering the corruption scandals and the failed coup attempt that he tried to give in Brazil on January 2023. So I consider that there is an emotional bond between the leader and the followers, and there is an effect in the constitution of the far right leadership. So that's why it's very difficult to combat this kind of movements, because they are not always rational. But in the case of Argentina, Javier Milei is an economist that got known in the media and in the social media. He presented himself as someone that represents the liberal tradition and the libertarian tradition. And he attacked the left, and also he's being supported by some sectors of the military that defend the military dictatorship here in Argentina, the legacy of the military authoritarian dictatorship that killed something like 30,000 people in Argentina. Also, Milei speaks against what he calls a political casta, that is something extracted from the left-wing party Podemos from Spain. It's a category that made him very successful here in Argentina. But at the same time, he attacks especially the left-wing politicians and LGTB groups. Milei started to grow in the media and in the social media when here in Argentina we experienced the pandemic. We experienced on the last years the pandemic and the process of very high inflation here in Argentina. Also, there was a center-left government, Peronist. For foreigners, Peronism is something very difficult to understand. For us that we are Argentinians, also it's very difficult. But this government with Alberto Fernandez, that is the president, and the vice president, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner, that has more power than Alberto Fernandez because she put him on the presidency. There was a very deep struggle between them. So, and at the same time, there was the pandemic, and for example, there was a corruption process regarding the situation of vaccination of the people, where the people that was linked to the state and to the politics was vaccinated first. So that created a sensation on the population, a situation where the population believed that was some privileges for the politicians against the rest of the population. Of course, that was a very something very bad for a government that pretended to be center-left or progressive or popular. So that destroyed the popularity of the government. And also, there were the government of Alberto Fernandez confront the pandemic with very restrictive sanitary measures. So that gave the situation where far-right influencers started to defend what they call freedom, right? The freedom to circulate, the freedom to oppose to the state that was restricting the circulation. And also, well, in that situation, most of the campaign subjects, the campaign agenda for these elections had been installed by Milei and their followers. He proposed, for example, Milei proposed a process of dollarization of the economy to combat the high inflation that we have. And so people started to believe that if we have a dollarization process, that will change their salary, their wages in pesos to dollars. So they are going to become rich. That created, Milei created that belief on the population. He also promoted an irresponsible and radical individualist version of freedom, as opposed to that of community and solidarity, especially during the pandemic. He also said that the pandemic was promoted by the Foro de Sao Paulo, that it's a left-wing organization that unites some political figures of the left wing here in Latin America. But he promoted that conspiracy theory that the pandemic was something promoted by the Foro de Sao Paulo. But also, to understand the far right in every place, but here in Argentina too, it's important to consider the interactions between the far right and the mainstream right. So, both constitute, between cooperation and competition, a right-wing ecosystem that is important to analyze and understand. And I have to say that during the years, Patricia Bullrich, that is the other candidate of the mainstream right here in Argentina for this Sunday, but she supported on the last years some positions that Milei adopted also. She legitimized Milei, that idea of dollarization, that idea of resistance against the pandemic sanitary measures by the government. And also former President Macri, that is a mainstream right politician, started to support Milei's statements about the state, about the political class. He says extremist positions. For example, Milei attacked another moderate right-wing politician called Horacio Rodríguez Larreta, that is the governor of Buenos Aires, of the city of Buenos Aires, but nobody on the mainstream right, said that that was something that they have to reject. Also, for example, Milei was the only politician that supported the failed cap in Brazil in January of this year, but nobody rejected that statement. And also, I have to say that on the last years, what happened in Brazil and Chile was that the mainstream right has been in a process of declination with the growing of the far right. In Brazil, the PSDB, that was the traditional right-wing party, is in a process of decline, and Bolsonarism has been growing and replacing that traditional right. And in Chile, also, the parties that supported Piñera government are losing support, and it's growing very much the support for José Antonio Cast, that is a radical right politician. Well, I think that we are experiencing also in Argentina a setback of the mainstream right and a growing of the radical right. And also, Milei not only attacks Peronism, but he also attacks radicalismo, that is another center party. He says that the problem in Argentina, the problem started in 1916, when democracy, when the massive and secret vote began. So he said that the problems here in Argentina started when, precisely in the year where the massive and secret vote began, right? He attacked especially Raúl Alfonsín, saying that he was the worst president in Argentina. But Alfonsín was the first president in Argentina after the dictatorship, and he was very recognized in the world for his judgment of the military junta militar that was responsible for the last dictatorship that killed a lot of people in something that was characterized as a genocide, right? But the thing is that when Alfonsín, the former president, assumed, he said that with democracy we can heal, eat, and educate. But that definition of Alfonsín, the idea that there was a social aspect of democracy that was going to be successful, that was a big failure in Argentine democracy. Today in Argentina, 6 of 10 children are poor. So we are having a very high inequality problems, poverty problems, high inflation problems. And that's why precisely this scenario has been a fertile ground for these authoritarian and demagogic candidates such as Javier Milei. He also, Milei, has been followed by neoliberal economists from Menemismo, that was a neoliberal experience, a populist neoliberal experience on the 90s. Carlos Rodriguez, Roque Fernandez, and Dario Epstein, who were involved in the privatization process of public companies in the 90s, are supporting him right now. Well, and also we have to consider the Villarroel factor, what I named the Villarroel factor. Victoria Villarroel, that is the vice president candidate for La Libertad Avanza, that is the Milei party, comes from a family of military genocides from the dictatorship. She, for example, organized here in Argentina something called the Club de los Viernes, Fridays Club, a round table coordinated by Vox supporters. When I say Vox, I refer to the radical right-wing party of Spain. For example, Ortega Smith, that is the secretary of the Spanish Radical Right Party, spoke with Victoria Villarroel, and also Victoria Villarroel participated on a lot of events of Vox. They also signed the Carta of Madrid, the Madrid letter of Vox, Javier Milei and Victoria Villarroel. So they are involved in that kind of international far-right networks. Well, I have to say that SEMA, that is a neoliberal university and think tank, is supporting him. And from there, he extracted some neoliberal economists that are part of his platform. And also, I finally, just to end my presentation, I say that Milei also uses religion, as I started to say with this presentation. For example, he defends that it's a liberal revolution, but at the same time, he uses a biblical phrase that says that victory in combat does not depend on the number of soldiers, but on the strength that comes from heaven, right? He says that, well, he compares himself to Moses, and in a biblical interpretation of his role, he defends a moral crusade against the impure politicians. So I think he's a serious threat to the democratic system, because in this type of conspiratorial vision that he has, those who disagree with him become enemies who represent a danger to his existence. And finally, when we compare Bolsonaro, Cat, and Milei, that they are the most important radical right leaders in Latin America, we have to say that the difference is that Cat and Bolsonaro constructed a campaign that was based on anti-communism and on security issues. But the first aspect, the most important aspect on Milei program is neoliberalism, is something against the state. A neoliberal plan at the center of his government platform. And this is because the phenomenon of Argentine hyperinflation puts society against the state. And Milei's political virtue consists in placing the desire for punishment against the political class and the state. So thank you very much.
Very, very interesting. Kind of like a weird curveball in what we're used to seeing in more recent kind of national popular radical right movements and parties and organizations. So really appreciate that insight. And we have a Q&A if people want to ask further about the religion issue and so on. Please feel free to drop something in the Q&A. Our next speaker, Cat Tebaldi, is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Luxembourg. Her research focuses on language and gender on the far right in the United States and Western Europe, and her most recent publications include Granola Nazis and the Great Reset, and a special issue of Gender and Language on anti-gender ideology in global nationalist movements. I know that Dr. Tebaldi does a lot of research in Switzerland, and today we'll be speaking about the Swiss radical right in light of the upcoming elections this coming Sunday. So I hope everybody gives a warm virtual welcome to Dr. Tebaldi, and I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm just going to share my PowerPoint here. I am not an expert on Switzerland, but since I am knowing a little bit about reactionary gender politics, I think by accident that makes me know a fair bit about Swiss politics. As Alex said, the Swiss elections are in about 4 days. They're considered by some political observers to be low interest. So let me try to explain to you why you might want to be interested in them. So the sort of mainstream right-wing party here, the SVP, or the Swiss People's Party, is predicted to win in possibly the largest, by the largest margin in their history. Let's talk a little bit about the Swiss political context. There's 26 cantons in Switzerland. Here's 3 that are good examples. Here's Appenzell, which is the last canton to give women the right to vote in my lifetime in 1990. Very cool. Half of the residents there still don't support LGBTQIA rights, and 45% are unvaccinated, so we at least have that good thing for us all. In Basel-Stadt, where I spend the weekends, about 27% of the residents are non-Swiss and can't vote in these elections. So it's interesting to be talking about the far right and mainstreaming in a place where you have to both be born in Switzerland, have Swiss citizenship, and do Swiss military service to be able to vote. Basel is a leftist city. It's the second lowest SVP vote, and recently lost a representative because they don't have enough voters. So it's interesting that they don't have enough voters, but they don't let people vote. They also have a far-right party called Volksaction, which is actually one guy called Eric. Then Zurich, which is where the SVP is the strongest, and the Zurich wing of the SVP is the anti-immigration, Eurosceptic, radical right populist party that we're going to be talking about. A little bit more about the SVP. It was founded in 1971. It was previously a farmers' party. It had a huge increase in popularity after 1990, due in large part to this guy, Christoph Blocher, who spent a long time building links to the new right and radical right groups and building youth groups. So then they have 2 factions, Bern, which is their more traditional centrist right-wing faction, and Zurich, which is a radical right populist faction that is Eurosceptic, climate change skeptic, anti-vax, and very, very anti-immigrant, which is sort of their most salient characteristic. They borrow a lot of discourses from other Swiss far-right parties. So here you can see the Swiss Democrats, whose themes seem to be too many people protecting the environment from other people, too many people who are Muslim, too many people who are foreign, too many people who are from Europe, too many people who are naturalized, the liquidation of Switzerland, which is a little bit of a kind of a depressing phrase. Again, the complaints about free circulation and the lack of our customs. This is this guy in Basel I mentioned. His address is, it's just a post box, too bad. I wish that was his actual address so you could find him and throw eggs at his house. He leads a party called the People's Action Against Too Many Foreigners and Refugees in Our Homeland, which is a lovely title. And then there's another one here, the Parti National Suisse, which is now disbanded, which again links too much immigration to overpopulation and the destruction of the environment. This is a discourse that's going to become important moving forward. So my sort of initial analysis of this is looking at how they use gender and the environment as kind of an outsider marketing. So there's a lot of opposition in this election to the idea of wokeness. The French-speaking SVP calls it the dictat du genre. Talk a lot about cancel culture using the English. There is also a lot of opposition to drag queen story hour and to gender-inclusive writing, what they call a gender star. Also, if you are like me learning Swiss German, they have a handy dictionary of words to talk about wokeness. And so they have a lot of very traditionalist, in quotation marks, gender politics. While the French-speaking part of Switzerland tends to have more feminationalist gender politics and talking a lot about immigrants committing violence against women, the German-speaking part tends to focus a lot on this sort of anti-gender ideology movements, which we see circulating globally. There's a lot of discussion of gender-inclusive writing as being a kind of thought control. You're not allowed to say what you want. And then there's this wonderful phrase here, gender gaga at the university. They have a sort of complex set of environmentalist discourses that are a lot about the beauty of nature and the importance of the mountains, Swiss people and their mountains. But these complex discourses often seem to go back to not having too many people. So here it's uncontrolled immigration destroys our beautiful nature. It must be pure every year. We need, 55,000 new households. That's ruining our beautiful pure green space. This idea of an environment that is worth it for today and for tomorrow is what this guy's talking about. Me personally, I think an environment is worth it is one without guys who look like this, but that's my own opinion. Okay, and then so this kind of complex environmental discourse is covering over a very simple immigration politics. It's this image over and over and over again. No more people in Switzerland, no more not 10 million people. They even sometimes have some bad gender and body politics. You can see this one in the corner. It's too much is too much. And they show a little fat guy because why not add a little body shaming into your discussion of immigration as well? So this is their same policy this year. Stop to the 10 million Switzerland. Some of the other issues they're talking about this year are e-voting and election fraud, free the internet, so kind of anti-disinformation techniques. Another one is against TV taxes. You have to pay, I think, $200 a year, everyone does, to have their TV in Switzerland. And they want to get rid of this because public broadcasting is too leftist, but the internet should be free. It's a little bit not contradictory. They're still mad about vaccines. And of course, their biggest issue is that they are unbearably corny. What I want to say here is, so what does this mean about mainstreaming? Can we talk about mainstreaming in a place where the mainstream is considerably to the right? I mean, a place where the last woman got the right to vote in my lifetime. And where is the radical right wing of a party that, what does that mean to say radical right when this party has been dominant in nearly every election in Switzerland? How do we talk about then? Maybe instead we talk about the circulation of radical right populist discourses into dominant parties, including anti-gender ideology, anti-vaccine, anti-climate change, in order to present the powerful as outsiders and support longstanding xenophobic politics. And last, thank you very much. This one here says, Basel stays Nazi-free.
Okay, yeah, that was really very fascinating. Can you go back to that slide where the very goofy one? I just wanted to see that again. There it is. What are they doing? Oh, sorry, you're muted. Oh.
Sorry, I can't figure out how to unmute myself and share my screen at the same time because I'm too distracted by I don't know what they're doing. I thought they were lightsabers at first, but now I think it's some kind of like right-wing silent disco. I really don't. I don't know.
It's a disco gaga from the anti-gender right.
And with, of course, the local, the Swiss German, right, to really the sort of written version of the Swiss German to really emphasize the like, you're from here, no outsiders. You can share it again.
Yes, yes. Okay, that is something else. All right, yeah, I think that you make a really interesting point, Kat, about the responsibility of more quote unquote mainstream or centrist parties to actually not sort of capitulate and effectively endorse the politics of the far right in order to attempt to stay current or bow to pressure. So very interesting conclusions in your excellent presentation. Thank you very much. And our last and final speaker is Jean-Yves Camus, a specialist of far-right movements in Europe and longtime contributor to the weekly Charlie Hebdo. He's a research fellow at the, I can't speak French at all, I wish somebody else was here to do this for me, Institute of International Relations and Strategies, and he's the director of the Observatory of Radical Politics at the Foundation Jean Jaurès in Paris. Also, he's the author with Nicolas Leborg of the extreme right in Europe. And you can see his bio at stanford.edu if you want to see the actual French for all of that. Dr. Camus, please take it away.
Thank you for inviting me to speak today. We do not have any election before the election to the Euro Parliament in 2024. We just had an election to the Senate, but the Senate of the French Republic is not like the Senate of the United States in the sense that citizens do not vote. The upper chamber in France is elected by members of the city councils and the local governments. It's a 348 member chamber. People are elected for 6 years, renewable term. And what is interesting is that the election took place on September the 24th this year. And the national rally, Rassemblement National in French, that's the party of Marine Le Pen, only got 3 seats, which brings a question here. How can a party with such a big popular support when it comes to the presidential election, 42%, can be so weak on the local level? That's really a problem for the party because in 2020, they only captured 16 cities, most of them small or medium-sized cities, and they only have 827 elected councilmen in a country of 36,000 cities, which is very low. So the question is the National Rally simply a protest party with the highest number of votes in the presidential election and no capacity to really establish itself as, I would say, a mainstream party, which means that you need to have a grassroots organization and elected officials? Or is it slowly, very slowly building some strengths at the local level, which is, of course, essential, I think, if they want to win the presidential election in 2027. The other point is, as you probably know, the National Rally, known as 88 members of the lower chamber, the equivalent to the House of Representatives, which is elected by the citizens. And I mean, that's the first time they really get so powerful. But they are challenged by the far left party, the La France Insoumise, which is really radical left party. And this strategy of our government, which is, I would say, center-right, is to say there are two equivalent radical parties in the political spectrum. One is positioned on the radical left and the other one on the radical right. But when it comes to being unable to being unfit to rule the country, the two of them are as dangerous for democracy, which is, of course, a big change from the 80s and 90s when the overwhelming majority of the population said that the National Rally was the only threat to democracy. Now we have an emerging far left, which is seen, and that is a very interesting figure, which is seen as unfit to rule the country by more than 50% of the citizens, while only 44% of the French now say that Marine Le Pen is unfit to become president. Said in another way, 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said, and most of my colleagues would have said, that Marine Le Pen would never get elected to the presidency. No, I do not say that this is what will happen in 4 years from now. But I mean, you have to think about it, because there is a slim possibility that the National Rally, which was founded in 1972 as a fringe movement, as a really irrelevant party with some, well, let's say 200 members, will become the next big party on the right. The possibility of Marine Le Pen being elected is real. And the reason is that over the last 10 years, she has tried to mainstream herself and mainstream the party by changing the leadership, ousting her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who was famous for his many anti-Semitic utterances, and by, I would say, paying much attention to the lower classes of society, the working class, but also the lower middle class, which is now faced with a huge dire economic situation. I mean, inflation is very high, and dissatisfaction with the mainstream party is growing. 45% of the French say that they feel angry at the institutions and angry at the mainstream parties. So the National Rally tries to capture this kind of protest vote and tells the voters that both the left, especially the Social Democrats, and the mainstream conservative right have failed. They have been into power from 1981 to 2023, and they want to really establish themselves as an alternative to the mainstream parties. But the big changes 4 or 5 years from now, they are just seen as a danger, as totally unfit to be elected, because they have no, I would say, no technical know-how, they were never in power, so they do not know. They were said to be unable to run the administration and take decisions. This has changed, and I mean, it's really a situation where today we had an opinion poll for the first time 2 weeks ago, saying that the far left was more of a danger and was, more of a danger to democracy than the extreme right. That's really a big change. So what are the policy changes within the National Rally? The first policy change is that, of course, they want to halt immigration, but they do not say that Islam is unable to fit into the Republican frame. You know, there's another far-right party in France, which is led by Éric Zemmour, and whose name is Reconquête, which is a name very close to the Spanish Reconquista. Zemmour's political creed is that Islam is not compatible with being French. You have to choose. If you are a Muslim, you have to live in a Muslim country, or you have to convert to Christianity. Marine Le Pen does not say that. She says, you can be a good Frenchman and a Muslim, but you need to assimilate. If you support Islamism, and she makes a difference between Islam and Islamism, well, you have to get out, and you should not be admitted. So today, Zemmour stands at the right of the National Rally on issues of immigration, on issues of multiculturalism, and on the issue of Islam. The other change in the National Rally is that they are less liberal with regard to the economy. Marine Le Pen went as far as saying, for example, well, if a big foreign company takes ownership of a French company and after 2 or 3 years decide to delocate to a third world country in order to pay less the workers, the French state should be empowered to nationalize the company. The French state should be able to, I would say, preempt the company and run it as a state company, which for liberals, free marketers, and so on, amounts to, I would not say communism, but to socialism. So the Jean-Marie Le Pen was, I would say, a Reagan-style liberal when it came to the economy. Marine Le Pen is not. And in the last 10 days, we have seen another change, which is huge. This is a change of stand of the National Rally on the topic of Israel and the Middle East. Jean-Marie Le Pen, as you might remember, was an anti-Semite and still is. He says that he doubted the existence of the Nazi genocide. He says that the Nazi occupation of France was not so harsh and that, well, there were some excesses, but on the whole, the Nazi rule of France was quite okay. Marine Le Pen comes from another generation. She's not interested in World War II. She's not an anti-Semite. She does not deny the Holocaust. And just think about that. 8 days ago, a week ago, there was a big demo in Paris in support of Israel, staged by the umbrella organization of French Jewry, which is about 500,000 people. Who did we see coming in the end of the demo? A bunch of, let's say, 10 MPs from the National Rally, coming in support of the Jewish community and saying, we are a shield for the Jewish community, a shield against terrorism, against jihadi Islam. We want to protect you. We are the only party that can protect you from terrorism. I happened to attend the demo, and what really struck me is that those people who were members of the National Rally who are seen on TV almost every day, so they were able to be recognized by the crowd. were not met. They were not met with, I would say, booze from the Jewish demonstrators. They were greeted just as any MP from any right-wing conservative party. It does not mean that the National Rally would get a significant number of Jewish votes, because anyway, the vote of the Jewish community
I'm sorry that the mute has been.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. That's okay. There we go. Sorry about that.
Well,
I think there's
that
something
was my
with the
final
video.
remark. When it comes to the National Rally approaching the Jewish community after the attacks of Hamas on Israel, the issue is not so much how many Jewish votes they will get in 2027, because the vote of the Jewish community means less than 180,000 votes. That's very small. It's an attempt to break away from the disastrous image of an extreme right party, at the core of which anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial were standing. It's a kind of normalization. The number of votes they will get does not matter, but that's another step in becoming just another party, maybe at the right of the mainstream conservative Les Républicains, but nevertheless, the fact that the National Rally is no mainstreaming is a reality one could not ignore. And final word from me. The number of anti-fascist organizations, the number of organizations opposing the National Rally, the political response to the National Rally from especially the left, but also from the Republican conservative right, has now become very weak. I mean, in the 1980s and 1990s, every time the National Rally had a meeting in some city in France, there were more protesters than people inside the meeting of the National Rally. Today, there are many people at their meetings and no counter demonstration.
Okay, yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Camus. And apologies for the technical difficulties. So I think those three talks are very interesting, and obviously there's a lot to think about. We do have one question from Vinicius, who says, hi, Vinicius. Hello, thanks for the webinar, very interesting. I would like to know from Professor Goldstein what results he thinks will come from the election if Milei really has a chance to be elected in a few days. So.
I have to answer now. Yes.
You don't have to, but if you have an answer, then I would be interested to hear it. Absolutely.
Well, I use this opportunity to say that both presentations from Professor Camus and Tebaldi were very interesting, and also I have read the book of Professor Camus about the extreme right in Europe, and it's a very interesting, very important contribution. So, but related to the question, I say that yes, of course, that Milei has a chance to become the next president. That's why here in Argentina right now, center right and center left parties and movements are so worried about. But The discussion here in Argentina for the Sunday, if is around about if Milei can win on this round of elections, because if he doesn't get the 45% of the vote, or 10 points of difference between the first and the second, if that doesn't happen, we will go to a second round, to a ballotage, where, well, Milei will confront the second collocated in that candidate that will go on the second place on the election. So I don't have doubts that Milei will obtain the first place on the elections, on the Sunday elections. The discussion is about who is going to confront him on the probably second round of the elections that is going to be in November. If it's going to be the center-left Sergio Massa, that is the virtual president here in Argentina right now. He's the economy minister, but he has 150% inflation on the last year, so is very complicated with that situation. Poverty is rising, so or if it's going to be the mainstream right candidate, that is Patricia Bullrich on the second round. So, but I have to say that Bullrich, that is a mainstream right candidate, in my opinion, can be a better contender, a better option to confront Milei on that second round, because she has a lower rejection on the population than Sergio Massa, that is the candidate of the government. That is very rejected because we have, as I said, 150% of inflation in 1 year. So that's very difficult to tolerate for anyone in this world. So, so that's my opinion. But I'm sure that Milei will win the elections on Sunday. Probably he will have to confront on November the second candidate collocated on the election of this Sunday, but I don't know who is going to be.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I think I would personally like to thank the panelists for joining us today. A lot of very fascinating insight, and obviously deeply disturbing as well. And again, if you are interested about the organization FRAN, you can reach out to me at aross@pdx.edu. Thank you to everybody who joined us. I understand that other things are going on in this world that are obviously very, very interesting, but I think this is a very relevant topic. So I appreciate those who came and joined us. Yeah, have a wonderful day or evening or wherever you are. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.